Welcome to Modern Tactical Shooting. This video, I take on viewer questions from YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So let's go. All right, so let's not waste any time and get right to it. The first question I'm going to answer, which is top 10 deployment items, actually will help answer two of the questions I received, which is low light home defense and packs and chest rigs for plate carriers. So in answering my top 10 deployment items, a lot of it has to do, of course, with my time in the military. But right after I retired, I did a short stint doing some military contracting, some PSD work. And for that role, I actually handpicked all the gear that I wanted to carry. And I had to be low level, meaning in civilian clothes. And the gear I went with, particularly the plate carrier, had to survive, a first look. Like if you just happen to glance over at me, you would not notice that I was armored up. Or if I happened to drive by, I wanted to survive that first glance. So I went super low level. Also, I had to fit in, regular civilian vehicles. My trusty ATS plate carrier. It is rigged up for full-blown combat, so I wanted something a little bit more low profile. So I'll get into it right now with my top 10 deployment items. So right off the bat, number one, and these are in no certain order, my first item I've always taken with me is Merrell shoes. I'm a huge Merrell's fan. For a lot of SF guys, they find them too soft. I like the soft soles. So I've worn Merrells on 3 to 4 combat deployments. That's one of the benefits of going Special Forces, besides allowing hands in pockets. You get to wear your own footwear on missions, and I'm a Merrell's guy. Now, the second item that I always, will take with me, that is body armor. And specifically, again, not for full-blown combat, but I wore this for my short stint during military contracting. And if I was in some sort of, shift scenario right now, or a bump in the night, I'm going to grab this Ferro Concepts Slickster. Now this is the first generation one. I got this a few years ago, back in 2017, specifically for contract work. And I picked this out, even though I'm an ATS guy, I'm always gonna recommend good kit. Good kit is good kit, despite who makes it. If there's something good out there, I'm gonna recommend it. And what drew me to this was, of course, it's low profile, completely slick, but more importantly, on the cummerbund, it's basically an elastic band on both sides. It can hold up to 4 magazines. I've got it rigged with 2 and 2 on each side. I have this rigged how I wore it when I was contracting, which I wore 2 mags in the front 2 pockets on each side. And on the back, or the rearmost pockets, I have a complete broken down IFAK to include a tourniquet. So I could wear this and throw a civilian shirt over it and not be that well noticed. And I had 4 mags on me, 1 on my gun, and a complete IFAK. So my number 2 pick, of course, is body armor, and for super slim, low profile, I don't think you can beat the Ferro Concepts Slickster. Now, to go along with that, super slim plate carrier, my third item is this ATS Slimline Chest Rig. Now, as the name implies, slimline, this is super low profile. I also took this with me when I did some contracting. It has 4 internal pockets to hold magazines and enough MOLLE webbing on the sides to put, whatever pouches you want to plus up with. I've got a double pistol mag here, a fast mag with another M4 mag and a tourniquet. During my time contracting, I usually had a grenade on this bad boy. And I really like this because you can wear it with the chest clips or these fast test buckles that can buckle right into most plate carriers, to include the Ferro Concepts Slickster. Or you can, and this is how I carried it overseas, in the chest rack mode. And this is slim enough that, I can put it next to the car seat or just behind my car seat. That way, if I happen to, get into harm's way or something kicked off, I could always reach for this. And I had 4 mags on my Ferro Concepts Slickster, but another 5 mags on here if I had a chance to throw this over me. So I was able to, double my basic load just by throwing that on. And that gets into my 4th item, which is packs. All right, so this is actually my 4th and 5th item. This is a Warrior Systems pack, and it has a Source 1-quart bladder in it. That is my next item on my list for my top 10. Now, during my time in Afghanistan, I actually utilized 2 different packs. This Warrior Systems one, and also a Source. It was a larger pack, a true 3-day pack. But this is my go bag size pack. I also use this contracting. There's a similar bag called the Eagle Yote. It's just as good, and it's SOCOM issue. One of my sons, who's in 3rd Ranger Battalion, he got issued a Yote, and I think a lot of SF guys are getting issued the Eagle Yote. But I purchased this on my own, mainly because of the size, and it has this cargo flap, which was great, you know, to quickly access some gear. I would wear this pack in Afghanistan if I was going on a vehicle infill mission. I wanted a small enough bag I could set next to me and grab in case I needed to, you know, get out and go look at stuff and patrol around. You don't want a go bag that's so large that it's, you know, cumbersome and really takes a lot of heft to take up and out of a vehicle. If it is super big, chances are you're not going to grab it when something kicks off. You want a go bag that's literally easy and quick to grab, and a pack this size is not too cumbersome. In Afghanistan, I had, you know, 1 quart of water in this. I'd use it for spare batteries for my nods, radios, and normally some belt-fed ammo, or a Carl Gustaf round I'd throw in here if somebody was rocking the Carl Gustaf. But literally just extra ammo and water for, you know, immediate access, not a 3-day assault pack. So this is a pretty good pack for that. The Eagle Yote, I think, is issued now. That's also a great pack. And so with the source bladder, this is number 5. And source bladder, I think this makes it number 6. All right, so the Warrior pack and bladder is actually 4 and 5. Number 6 is, of course, my Source UTA. This is their adapter, which you can remove the nozzle on your Source bladder and replace this to, you know, immediately, you know, refill with some water bottles. I covered this in my ATS plate carrier video. This is an item I definitely do not leave home without. So this is my number 6 item, the Source UTA. Okay, number 7 and number 8 are knives. I've always carried a Swiss Army knife on me in Special Forces during my time on active duty. Guys made fun of me because I always carried a Swiss Army knife. They called it the old man knife. I'm retired now. I am old, so I guess that fits. This one actually has a Swiss clip, pocket clip on here. If you see me out and about, I will probably have this in my, you know, jeans pocket. The other knife I want to talk about is my Cold Steel Push Dagger. I've had this bad boy since 1994, 1995. I'm not going to lie, I watched the movie Platoon, and I want to emulate Barnes in it. He carried a push dagger just like this. This knife has been all around the world, Africa, Middle East, everywhere. It's always been on my belt. When I got this in 94, 95, it was even on the back of my Alice belt. But during my time in Special Forces, this sat on the back of my war belt in a spot where I could reach it with either hand grabbing behind me. Again, I'm not a knife fighter. I have no ambition or desire to knife fight it out with somebody. This is just for a space maker, meaning if I got tackled and I can't get to my gun, I'm too busy trying to secure my weapons so they don't use it against me. If I can get one hand around, I'm going to grab my space maker, use this to make space to get to my gun, and finish the fight with lead. And that's my goal. I'm not a big knife fight dude at all. I do like to get my kickboxing on, but knife fighting is just not for me. So this is a last resort space maker. I've always carried it on me, even when I was contracting. It's a good knife that you can conceal. And worst case scenario, if I'm down to this, I guess it's better than nothing. All right, continuing on, let's talk about lights, and this will help answer the low light for home defense. I'm a huge Surefire fan, but let's face it, Surefire, they are pricing themselves out of reality for the everyday soldier or policeman. A lot of soldiers aren't going to drop $200+ on a super high-speed handheld light, along with your entry-level policeman. I just don't see it being practical anymore. I really like Streamlight brand, super affordable on these great little handheld lights. Again, if you watch my ATS plate carrier video, I always carried a handheld light on my plate carrier. It was a Surefire one, but right now I'm really digging this Streamlight because it has a strobe feature. If you double tap it, you get a little strobe function, and that also mirrors the capability that I have for my weapon light. Now, of course, this is an M4 clone, not my duty rifle. This is the main rifle I teach with if you come down to my courses. But on here, I have a Blackhawk Gladius from 2005. This is also on my top 10 list. This rifle has been on, one Iraq and all 3 Afghanistan deployments, and it's on the original bulb. This light probably has 30 to 40,000 rounds fired on it when it was mounted on a gun. Still works, but more importantly, it has a strobe function. I'll see if I can get it to work behind me. It's not going to really show up on camera that much. There it is. That strobe function, I think, is a technique and a function that still has not caught on. I do not know why. It is a fabulous function. When you're strobing, it makes it harder for the enemy to pinpoint you. Even if it's just a split second, that split second it takes for them to pinpoint your location, you can actually be using that to gain the advantage on them and give them some lead. And if you have a whole team and you're all strobing in the house, I guarantee you the enemy will have no clue where you're at and also how many soldiers they're fighting against if you're all strobing. It makes it super confusing. So for your low light home defense, I highly recommend a strobing weapon light. This Gladius, I don't even know if it's made anymore. It's by Night Ops, but there are other weapon lights out there that do strobe. I think it's something that if you're thinking of home defense, you need to look into getting your strobing weapon light. I like the handheld version because if I get in a fist fight and I can't handle them with just fists, especially if it's late at night, I'm going to put my strobing flashlight in my hand and I'm going to use this to help blind them. And then I'm going to duke it out once I, momentarily blind them, or I'll just hammer fist them with the light itself. So I don't go anywhere without a pocket light. If it came to a pocket light and a knife, I will always go for the pocket light just because I can incorporate it into my kickboxing and give them some fists. Because again, I'm not a knife fighter. So strobing flashlight and strobing weapon light are on my top 10 list. Now rounding out my top 10 is a multi-tool. One of my favorites is this Gerber multi-tool. If you serve enough time in the military, they throw these things at you at the beginning of every deployment. This one has some AR or M4 specific tools on here, like this front sight tool, which comes out. Next question I got was, what are the contents of my IFAK? The IFAK I'm using right now is actually a kangaroo style one made by ATS that I wear on the bottom of my ATS Slimline Chest Rig. This will also attach to most plate carriers. Now, before I get into the contents of an IFAK, let me just say this. You need to get training. Having all that stuff on hand might make you feel good and feel like you're ready, but if you don't have training to use the stuff in an IFAK, you're really only halfway prepared. For instance, a lot of people carry Quick Clot as their go-to way of stopping a major bleed. I'm pretty comfortable with normal old gauze. I can pack a wound pretty well. I know how to identify the major bleed, which is part of why you need training to be able to, properly learn how to identify bleeds and then properly pack them. Because if you're just relying on something like this and no training, there's no guarantee that this is going to work. So if you're going to roll with an IFAK beyond, say, a tourniquet and a simple pressure dressing, you need to get training. Also, you need to be thinking about liability. I don't carry a needle for needle decompression in my regular old IFAK now. Back in the military days, I did, because you need to have this. If you build up, you get shot in the torso, you can build up air basically in there, and then it can start collapsing one lung. But that takes a while. The reason why these are issued out in the military is you don't know if that medevac is 1 hour out, 6 hours out, or it could be a whole day out if there's some huge battle going on, a lot of stuff going on. So you could fall victim to that issue where you need some sort of needle decompression. But here in the States, and as a civilian, you're working yourself into liability if you carry one of these and you jam somebody. You don't have any proper, medical licenses. Even a lot of the military training does not cross over to the civilian world as far as being certified. So this is the one item I'd leave out, and honestly, you don't need it. Somebody gets blasted in training, I'm going to stop the bleed, roll them over onto their side and put them in a recovery position and call 911. Unless you're on some mountain expedition out in Colorado somewhere, humping the hills, most of your ERs are less than an hour away. So you just need to stop the bleed. And again, a simple tourniquet and pressure dressing, you can watch YouTube videos and learn how to use these pretty effectively. But for a lot of stuff, you should get proper training. Now, what do I carry in my IFAK? Of course, another tourniquet, pressure dressing. I do carry Quick Clot gauze, normal gauze, rubber gloves to protect myself if I have time to put them on. I have two types of chest seals here. Again, you need to have training to even be able to identify when, a torso type wound would call for a chest seal. And I have a nasal tube and This is, of course, somebody's passed out and unconscious, but again, that's borderline. I would not be in a rush to throw these into somebody here back in the stateside civilian world. So, but mainly just keep items to stop the bleed. If you don't have a lot of training, you know, just carry a bunch of pressure dressings and a tourniquet, and that will solve a lot of your issues. You know, if somebody gets their leg lopped off, you throw on a tourniquet, you're going to be able to stop the bleed if you know how to, you know, apply a tourniquet correctly to begin with. But that's the contents of my IFAK. All right, another question I received is my preferred sling setup. Now, I'm a big fan of the VTAC padded sling. We use those forever in Special Forces. We were issued them. But in the last few years, I've really come to like this Sierra Tac 2-point padded sling. And the reason why I come to like it over the VTAC is just the adjustment buckle. It's a metal clasp that's basically a friction lock, and it's super easy to adjust on the fly. Now, as far as how do I like it attached on the gun, the buttstock quick release mounts, but more importantly in the front, I like the sling to go behind my support hand when I'm holding the rifle. So I'm a lefty. Let me spin this bad boy around and sling it up. So slung up, let me adjust it. When I mount the sling, I like it behind my support hand so it doesn't get in the way at all. And that's how I run it, of course, over my shoulder. But this is my preferred sling setup. When I'm running AKs, I'll run it the same way. And of course, the Sierra Tac sling. I still got some VTAC padded slings. I think they're both great options. One interesting question I got was eye dominance. Now, I am a lefty with my rifle, a righty with my pistol, and I'm a left eye dominant. So when I'm running a rifle, really it's no problem because it does line up left eye. I shoulder the rifle with my left, so it's no big deal. The problem comes in when I'm shooting pistol. Now, to make up for it, one, if you've seen photos of me when I'm got my pistol in the two-hand grip, it is offset to line up with my left eye. But another thing I do, and this, some people pointed this out during my El Presidente video. If you check out this clip here, you'll see me just ever so slightly squinting my right eye. I don't completely close it, but that's one technique I kind of just do naturally to hone in and make sure I have my, you know, my dominant eye lined up behind the pistol. Is it better to shoot both eyes open all the time? Yes, it is. But I just naturally have a habit of squinting my right eye. I don't close it all the time, but that's how I deal with it when I'm shooting pistol. It works for me. All right, one question I was asked quite a long time ago was how to get classic Galil magazines to work in an ATI Galeo. The problem with ATI Galeos to keep in compliance with the United States, you know, ATF rules. They count the magazine as one U.S. part, and the receivers are basically machined to only take the Tapco brand 30-round magazines, which run just fine. I have a whole slew of these Tapco mags. They all work great. They just look kind of goofy, and they don't match the overall look. Plus, they're not 35-rounders. So if you want to be able to run and use your classic IWI or IMI 35-round mags, you're either going to have to modify the magazine or the receiver, which I'll cover right now. Now for my Galeo, I chose to modify the magazines, and I'll get into that in just a little bit, but you can modify the receiver if, you know, you're bold enough. Basically, you're going to have to take some metal out at the back end of the magazine well because it's shaped literally just to accept the back end of a Tapco mag. So you have to take some metal out both back ends, and you also might have to take some metal out between the receiver and the locking tab on the magazine release. I did not go that route. I chose to modify the magazines, and I'm kind of glad I did because the specs on these mags are all over the place. Let's face it, they're 20 to 30-year-old magazines. They're not made anymore. This one looks brand new only because it was rephosphated and sold as reconditioned. But basically, you have to take metal off the back end of the mag here. If you check out the close-up in this photo, you can see where I just took a flat file. I took some metal out on both sides. You might also have to take some metal out off the top of the locking tab so it will seat deep enough into the rifle. And I have a dozen of these magazines, and even modified, I've only maybe have half of them I've been able, you know, to get to work in the gun, and that's because frankly they're just all worn out, and a lot of them have bad feed lips. So you know, even if you get this mag to fit, it's not guaranteed it will run just because it could be unserviceable from the get-go. Now, an interesting question that I did get was how to train using an indoor range. And that's a great question. A lot of indoor ranges do not allow drawing from the holster, which is kind of lame, but you can get around that. The key thing is you want to obviously, you know, work on drills that balance speed and accuracy, and you're pretty much limited at most ranges to a single target bay. Now, first off, if you're going to train in an indoor range, try to use humanoid type targets like your USPSA style, targets that have a kill zone. Don't fall for the trap of buying their weirdo zombie targets or just shooting bullseyes. You ought to be looking for something that replicates a human type target that has a good high kill zone. Second, if you can't draw from the holster, as you can see in this video, which I'm just kind of simulating being an indoor range, you should always at least try and work on picking up your front sight. Here in the video, I'm just practicing pressing out for time and taking 2 shots and working on double taps in controlled pairs. And then, of course, working up to a 5-round string and a reload. If you can do high round count strings, they ought to be controlled and work on driving that target down and, of course, practicing multiple distances. All right, last question for this video is what do I think about budget optics, specifically your low power variable optics? Well, I used a VCOG 1:6 during my last tour in combat. That's what I desired to use. And I do know 2 Special Forces guys that rocked Vortex Strike Eagle 1:6s in combat. And despite everybody on the internet losing their minds and saying they would never trust their lives with those scopes, I heard no complaints from those guys. Those scopes held zero. They put them to good use and they worked. Now, I myself, I own a Vortex Strike Eagle 1:8. This is a 1st Gen 1. And the reason why I bought this was for 3-gun matches. Even though I had the VCOG, it was in 1:6. And honestly, I just didn't feel like spending, you know, $2,000 on another scope just to have an extra 2-power magnification. I gave this budget optic a whirl, and it's been fantastic for me in 3-gun. Now, I only shoot maybe half a dozen 3-gun matches a year at most. Right now, I'm doing a lot of 2-gun only. And in the 2-gun matches where I shoot at, everything's 100 yards and under, so I use a red dot. So this, you know, gets shot not a whole lot. So that goes into one of my reasons. If you don't have the reason or the requirement to shoot like a lot of long shots, then why go out and spend the money on a $2,000, you know, high-end variable optic when some of these budget ones work awesomely? And that's the case with this Vortex Strike Eagle. So look at your requirement and your use. There are a lot of good brands out there. I actually, when I was looking at this Strike Eagle, I was playing with the primary arms. I think it was the 1:5 at the time. Side by side, this one just looked a little bit clearer. That's why I ended up going with the Vortex Strike Eagle. And like I said, I just played with a newer Strike Eagle 1:8, and the clarity and the quality blew my mind. Again, your low budget optics are getting better and better. And if I was, you know, maybe if I was shooting at the 3-gun national level where I was hitting all the big 3-gun matches, I might invest, you know, in say a Vortex Razor or a VCOG 1:8, something that I know will totally not let me down. But for my application, this Vortex Strike Eagle 1:8 for me, you know, has worked great. To answer the question, yes, there are some very capable, I'll say low budget variable optics out there. I like Vortex brand, primary arms, they got great reviews. I'd look at them too. So there it is. That is answering questions part 2. Hopefully I did not miss any questions that were submitted to me. Now before I go, I do want to mention that I have laid out my training courses for 2022 in a separate video. I'm kicking off a performance rifle class here in North Carolina at Woody's Rifle Club in New Hill, North Carolina. That's on 12 February. There are still slots available as of the day I'm dropping this video. So please check that out. I have a separate video for that, and you can always, of course, check all my social media. But I appreciate the questions. Hopefully I answered them all, and I will make a future answering question video in a few months just to catch up. So as always, enough watching me. Go out, hit the range, get your shoot on. I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.